Spiritual Warfare Part 3. Fire is used as a weapon for war. It is also true in spiritual warfare because spiritual fire, which is used in battle, is a flame of love. When it is used by the enemy, it becomes a flame of love for self, material possessions, self indulgence, lust, and self gratification. In its most destructive form, this spiritual fire turns out to be hatred and devouring qualities. Forces of evil use fire to burn down their bulwarks of virtue, morality, and loving kindness, empathy, mercy are what is required. This weapon is to be feared, for it can consume the very marrow of the mind and the soul, leaving the spiritual warrior nothing more than empty, charred shell of a human being. Care must be taken not to allow the enemy to approach with such a fire. When the fire of the nature is ignited by the enemy within the encampment of the spiritual warrior's soul and being, every effort must be made to extinguish it immediately, for it can grow rapidly out of control, producing damage. But there is another kind of fire which is not hurtful, that is the fire of love that warms, rejuvenates, gives life and meaning to all the things in the warrior's life. That love can be defined in many ways. It is the very life of everything that lives and breathes. It is the force that lives and moves all things. It is a motivating force for good in spiritual warrior. It is what causes the spiritual warrior to dream of victory and peace and a better way of life for all. It is an inspiration which moves the spiritual warrior to charge. Now, love consists of love for self, love for the world, love for others, and love for the divine. These four loves should exist all the spiritual warriors. When they are properly ordered, it brings a lot of happiness in the spiritual life. When out of order, they invite an enemy attack. These loves are out of order when the love for self reigns more supreme than the warrior's life and actions, for all the actions are taken for self promotion and care. So these loves are out of order when the spiritual warrior holds the material gain as the greatest prize, for this closes the vertical pathway to spirituality and cuts off communication with the source. Even when the love of others reigns over all without regard for the divine, the spiritual warrior becomes a servant to others, and dependence upon others' approval cripples his spiritual life. We need to love God, the source. But even when the love of others reigns over all without regard for divine, the spiritual warrior becomes servant to others, and a dependence on others' approval cripples his ability to have a genuine spiritual path. The warrior serves the king, not the people. The spiritual warrior serves the divine and the cause of the divine. When it's rightly ordered, love for the divine reigns within the combatant, followed by love for others as a servant to this greater love, followed in turn by love and respect for material world, and finally for the self. So this is the hierarchy of love. When this order is accomplished, the spiritual warrior is perfected and stands as a noble warrior, a master combatant. Positioned upon such a foundation, the warrior cannot be moved by any enemy. Though love that is attacked by the spiritual enemy, it is through the struggle of combat that love can be purified. It grows, is perfected, and wading through the smoke of spiritual warfare, the goals become more clear. Pushing through enemy lines in the heat of war, devotion becomes stronger. Enduring the toil of war, the warrior's power becomes a mighty force for good. Suffering the pain of the spiritual warfare, the joy becomes much more sweeter. Therefore, you continue your campaign in the confusion of the battle and do not fail to penetrate the enemy lines in the heat of the combat. Endure until the end, knowing that through this struggle, even though you may become weak, you will be mighty, and you will have the ecstasy of triumph. You need to face all your challenges, whether you believe in devils or angels in the business, but the principle is sound. Ask yourself, suppose you didn't care about marriage, why would you be battling the temptation to walk away from it? If you didn't care about your daughter, why would you struggle to approach her with maturity and calm rather than the rage you so often feel in your heart? If you really didn't care about walking with integrity, why would you even struggle to do so? The answer is that the enemy, whether we call it the shadow, the self, the devils, or demons, attack the most noble part of us in an effort to bring us down. Knowing this truth, we find comfort. We need to struggle against such attacks, but the struggle is not sign of weakness, but of strength. The attacks are not necessarily times of downfall or erosion of character, but an opportunity for commitment and growth and character building. The wonderful thing about victory in spiritual battle is not simply that we fade off as an enemy to our well-being and potential for growth, but that by fading off that enemy, we can grow. Anger, resentment block the loving kindness and healing power. Are fires of anger and resentment lingering in your being? Can you take steps towards forgiveness and let go of that anger? Allow those destructive fires to die out. Notice the relief and the peace which follows. Notice what is being attacked in your life and the spiritual battles you are thrust into. By careful examination, you can see that it is something you truly love which is being attacked. Remind yourself that the spiritual struggle does not indicate weakness but strength. Pray for strength in the areas of battle and for victory. Love in action brings about spiritual transformation. Think of some people who could benefit from an act of kindness. Write their names on a list. Beside those names, write down an action you could do to brighten their day. Experience some of your kindness. This could be phone call, note of appreciation, an offer of help, anonymous gift, whatever you think would be appropriate. Within this week, you can perform those kind actions and see how it helps them and how it helps you. The spiritual warrior cannot enter into the divine way except through conscious commitment. This is the cause which motivates and directs him. Through this cause, which best be summed up as an allegiance to what is good and true, the warrior is able to transcend the self. And through the right being and action, as a result of such transcendence, the spiritual warrior is transformed. And this is called rebirth, spirituality, recovery, or salvation. It is for the spiritual warrior the realization of the complete and total victory. Therefore, if you wish to be a master warrior, you need to have allegiance to what is good and true. In being, thought, action, this is your cause and one for which you will fight. And this is your cause. This is your purpose of life. This is what gives meaning to your life and one for which you will be even ready to die if necessary. Once the noble cause is adopted, the battle begins. Though every victory over the dark forces brings about freedom, new light and love, new humanity to all who dwell on the earthly terrain, it begins within. We must necessarily begin within because the spiritual warrior cannot change the world if he cannot change himself. He cannot rid the world of evil if he cannot rid the evil within himself. He has hard pressed to contribute goodness and love to the world if he is not able to produce goodness and love within himself. So the battle is within and the victory is within and not without. Through ejecting all the demons that are within one's own conscious battlefields, the demons are cast out of the world. Through the cultivation of loving kindness, understanding, and mercy in oneself, the world receives as much in return. So fight the battle within, and you can fight and win fulfillment of the noble cause in both the worlds, inner and outer. Win the battle and the victory for one and the many. You can become fully human once you become human. You can discover what it means to be a warrior. As the spiritual enemies within are encountered either through self-discovery or attack, the way of the master warrior is calm, determination, persistence, humility, and openness to a divine leading. Without calm, there can be no openness. Without determination, there can be no persistence. And without humility, there can be no divine leading. Without divine leading, there can be no spiritual victory. One depends upon the other. As soldiers in battle, they rely upon each other. When in the heat of battle, do not hesitate to call for spiritual aid. It is the key for winning every combat. When all seem lost, continue your determination, for the tide of the battle will turn. It does not turn, and defeat is inevitable. Rather than surrendering in lost hope to the enemy, surrender to God and the divine. Victory is never impossible, it is only delayed sometimes. Remember that with the divine, all things are possible always, and victory is achievable always, if not now, then later. As the Bible says in the book of Revelation, to him who overcomes, I will give some of the hidden manna to eat, and I will give him a white stone, and on the stone a new name written, which no one knows except him who receives it. Through the victory in spiritual battle, the warrior grows in power, strength, and ability, in wisdom and vitality, and in the course of time may be as fierce as ever, but the warrior's powers and abilities are as strong and keen as ever. Through such engagement, the master warrior learns about the terrains, avoids the deadly, and makes the camp on protected sites. You need a right disposition, skill in maneuvering, the awareness of the types of battleground, quality of the enemy, one's own strengths and weaknesses. The master warrior becomes invincible against all the spiritual enemies. Freed from the enemy, he walks in the way of life, the way of love, the sacred way, the way of the divine, akin to all that is experienced by the self and witnessed by all. With visible breath I am walking, a voice I am sending as I walk. In a sacred manner I am walking, with visible tracks I am walking, in a sacred manner I walk. Because of what the spiritual warrior has seen and experienced in battle, having become fully aware of the spiritual and earthly terrains, the warrior sees 1,000 yards ahead of most people. Walking softly upon the terrains, awake to all things, the spiritual warrior scans the horizon with precision and care, alert as an eagle, careful as a deer, quiet as a fox, and innocent as a dove. The warrior sees what others do not see, act while others react, knows but while others are still only guessing. Because of the scars of the previous battles, he is now walking humility, open to all things and to all beings. He is more flexible because of the memory of the pain of the battle. The warrior has deep empathy for all who are struggling against their own personal demons. Experiencing the isolation of spiritual combat, the master warrior offers a hand and companionship to those who are crying out for spiritual allies. The spiritual warrior seeks out fellow combatants to bound in support of one another, to unite allies against a common foe. The master warrior aid one another in battle, not because they fight each other's battle, but rather they can offer understanding and help in the battle. The desire to become a master warrior, to fight the real enemy and perhaps the only noble battle, the battle against the self. And I couldn't have imagined actually winning that battle, but it gets better every day. Here's to the victory. So, therefore, we need to face our spiritual enemies, find our allies who will go into battle with us, explore together how to take control of our lives, allow for the possibilities your God has in store for you, and give yourself the opportunity to know the spiritual integrity, love, and freedom. If you do so, you not only help yourself, but by walking with intention and nobility as a true spiritual warrior, you make this world a better place for you and for others. Make a commitment to live and represent and stand up for what you consider to be good and authentic way. What does that look like? What pledge can you make to walk in this way? Make that pledge. Examine your life and do not approach the spiritual battle with calm determination, humility, and openness and divine help. Which qualities do you demonstrate well, which you need to work on? Take steps to improve these areas which you need to work on. What is the voice you send as you walk the path of life? What would you like to commit to and communicate to? How can you walk your life in a very sacred manner? What tracks would you like to leave behind? The choice is yours. The biggest enemies in our journey are frustration, rejection, and fear. Most people fear these enemies, but we need to fight against them and prove victorious. Many times, as human beings, some of our basic needs are attention, affection, appreciation, awareness, allowing. So, we need love, courage, faith, and compassion in order to overcome the the emptiness that we feel whenever these needs are not met. We need to be aware that we need self nurturing. We need to identify our childhood patterns and grieve over it. And lastly, we need to have spiritual practices to connect with God and nature. Our parents do not owe us anything. We continue to blame them. We are only in the state of resistance and no resolution, and we tend to be stuck in life. We need security, but we not our egos have to not challenge anybody and tell them that you dared to do wrong to me, you dared to disagree, you dared to be left out, you dared to consider me not important, you dared to have more than me, you dared to make me feel needy. That is the ego that is speaking. An ego could be a deflated ego, inflated ego, or a balanced ego. We need to grieve in life. We need to choose a path of non-violence. We need to accept the defeat, but in humility. We need to defeat injustices in humility and not entitlement. We need to accept sufferings. There is no violence. Non-violence is the path. There is no inner hatred, but deep faith in grace and God, that God is supporting us and we are not alone. If we do not allow the grief to be settled, then it can result in retaliation, passive anger, and a sense of entitlement and the need to be equal. So the choice is ours. How important are these values to me? How important is the needs? Are they being fulfilled or not? What is my motivation? Am I growing or is my growth being affected? In this journey of mind, heart, and gut, are they agreeing with each other? Am I having integrity in my whole health and life? Am I consciously choosing spirituality and a lifelong loving attitude? Am I secure and have a secure base? Am I rooted in life? Have I a safe haven in my imagination? Do I feel accompanied by others, my friends, family, etc.? The grief process that your needs are like your parents, your belief systems are like your parents. What saddens you then and now every time you think about something that you miss? What are your fears that you had then and now? What is the anger that you had then and now? Admit it and then take care of yourself as an adult. Thank grace that you can tackle this issue. Let go of the charged up ego. Look at it as only information, not a need to win, but only connection. Only when you are healed, you have no pain of the memory. Your parents have no impact on your life. You do not feel a need to please them or obligated to take care of neediness and approval from them. You do not blame them. You accept your past as it is. It is neither worse nor the best, it is in between. You pray for them, you do loving kindness meditation for them. You are in a state of total flow and forgiveness. Selfish ego maintains a status, and relationships are secondary to it. And they do not want relationship, they have fear of commitment. When the ego is selfish, there are many problems. A retaliating ego is an arrogant ego, and the deflated ego is a not enough ego, which always has victim mentality, feels hurt immediately. It is always walking on eggshells and allows others to control and abuse it. An inflated ego, on the other hand, has passive feedback, which is very offensive and defensive and impulsive, reactive, self centered, entitlement centered, and fear based. So, life gives us a choice. We need to take the help of God and to resolve our issues of ego and let the ego serve us and not we being a victim to our egos. Only then we will be able to live a genuine life, a free life, full of compassion and love, and we will have a much better peace and happiness in life.